I was sorting through a stack of overdue bills when the letter arrived. No return address, just my name in deep blue ink, Daniel Cross, written in a way that felt almost deliberate. The envelope was thick, heavy, the kind of paper you'd expect to find in a lawyer's office, not shoved into a grimy apartment mailbox in the middle of downtown. For a moment, I thought about throwing it on the pile with the rest of the week's unopened mail. But something about the handwriting stopped me. It was confident, precise, the kind of script that belonged to someone who took their time, someone who knew exactly how they wanted to be understood. Inside was a single page, cream-colored, folded twice. Dear Mr. Once, Cross, by the time you receive this, you will have become the sole beneficiary of the late Harold Whitford's estate. You are to inherit the full sum of his assets, including properties, accounts, and personal belongings, valued at over $8.4 million. My first thought was that it had to be a scam. Harold Whitford? I didn't know any Whitford. I didn't even know anyone who knew a Whitford. The letter continued. This inheritance comes with one condition. Before any funds can be released, you must complete the enclosed list in its entirety. These tasks were written by Mr. Whitford himself before his passing. You have 90 days to complete them. Failure to do so will forfeit your inheritance, and the estate will be donated to a cause of his choosing. At the bottom was a signature looping, elegant. Eleanor Price, executor of the estate. I stared at the page, trying to make sense of it. $8.4 million. That was more than my brain could process. My rent was 3 months overdue. My fridge contained 2 eggs, half a bottle of ketchup, and a beer I'd been saving for my birthday. I didn't have family money, or really any family left. My mother had passed years ago, and my father had been out of the picture long before that. And yet, here was this letter, speaking to me like I'd been waiting for it all my life. Tucked behind it was another sheet of paper. This one was handwritten not by Eleanor Price, but someone else. The ink was slightly faded, the letters uneven, like they'd been written with a trembling hand. 1. Find the house with the green door at 112 Claremont Street. Go inside. 2. In the study, open the 3rd drawer on the right. Take what you find. 3. Find the woman named Margaret and return the item to her. And that was it. 3 lines. No explanation. No clues about who Margaret was or what I'd be taking from that drawer. I should have thrown the whole thing away. I should have left, told myself it was a prank, and gotten back to the real problem of deciding which bill to pay this month, electricity or rent. But instead, I found myself staring at the address. Claremont Street wasn't far. Maybe a 20-minute walk. Before I knew it, I'd grabbed my jacket and left my apartment. Claremont Street sat in one of those older parts of the city where the air always smelled faintly of dust and rain. The houses were tall, narrow, and all slightly different, a row of aging personalities pressed shoulder to shoulder. Number 112 was easy to spot. The green door was brighter than I expected, freshly painted, like someone had been keeping it up. I hesitated before knocking. No one answered. I tried the handle, expecting it to be locked, but it swung open with a soft click. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and something else, cedar, maybe. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with faded photographs. They were all in black and white, except for one, a picture of a young man in a crisp suit, smiling like he owned the world. The study was exactly where I thought it would be, just past the living room. Heavy shelves filled with books from floor to ceiling. A desk sat in the corner, old and dark, with brass handles. My pulse quickened as I knelt and opened the 3rd drawer on the right. Inside was a small wooden box, maybe the size of a shoebox, wrapped in a strip of deep red ribbon. A single name was burned into the lid. Margaret. I didn't open it. I don't know why, maybe because I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on me, like whatever was inside wasn't meant to be seen by just anyone. I left the house with the box under my arm. As I stepped back into the daylight, I noticed something I hadn't before. A man in a dark coat, standing at the far corner of the street, watching me. When our eyes met, he turned and walked away. I stood there on Claremont Street, the box pressed against my ribs like it might vanish if I let go. The man in the dark coat had disappeared around the corner, but the image of his still, watching figure stuck in my mind. The street felt quieter now, too quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own heartbeat. I started walking back toward downtown, quickening my pace without meaning to. Every so often, I'd glance over my shoulder, expecting to see him again. By the time I reached my apartment, my palms were sweaty. I set the box on my kitchen table and stared at it. I told myself I was just going to check, just to make sure there wasn't anything dangerous inside. But my fingers hovered over the ribbon without untying it. Instead, I pulled out my phone and searched Margaret Whitford and Harold Whitford. I wasn't expecting much, but I got more than I bargained for. Harold Whitford had been a real estate mogul in the 1970s and 80s, known for buying up entire blocks in the city and flipping them for massive profit. He'd also been notoriously private, no wife, no children, or so the public believed. But buried halfway down the search results, I found an old newspaper clipping from 1994. Missing woman case goes cold. Margaret Whitford, 27, was last seen leaving her apartment in Midtown on the evening of September 12th. Police found no signs of foul play, but friends report she seemed anxious in the days before her disappearance. Margaret is the niece of real estate developer Harold Whitford, who has declined to comment. My breath caught. Niece. Missing since 1994, and here I was, holding a box with her name on it. I went to pour myself a glass of water, but my hands were trembling so much I almost dropped the glass. I needed to know what was inside. I untied the ribbon, slid the lid off, and froze. Inside was an old photograph, the same young man from the hallway picture at 112 Claremont Street, only this time, he was standing beside a young woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. They were both smiling, but there was something about her smile. It didn't reach her eyes. Under the photograph was a folded letter, its edges yellowed with age. The handwriting was neat, but urgent. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't get away. He won't let me leave. Please find the key. It's in the desk at the cabin. Tell Uncle Harry I'm sorry, Margaret. A chill ran down my spine. Could Uncle Harry have been Harold Whitford? And what did she mean by he won't let me leave? Who was he? Before I could think too hard about it, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Put the box back. Tonight. I stared at the message. No name. No punctuation. Just that command. I typed back. Who is this? But the message failed to send. The number had already been disconnected. I locked the box in my closet and tried to sleep. But every creak of the apartment building made me jolt awake. At around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate. They stopped directly in front of my apartment. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps continued down the hall and faded. By morning, I was running on adrenaline and bad coffee. I called the number on the inheritance letter Eleanor Price's office and demanded answers. This is an unusual matter, Mr. Cross, she said, her voice calm but clipped. Mr. Whitford made very specific arrangements. Completing the list is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable? I said. Someone's watching me. Someone broke into my building. There was a pause. That is regrettable, she said finally. But Miss Whitford believed you were the only one who could see this through. If you wish to decline the inheritance, you may do so at any time. I hung up without answering. $8.4 million. I wasn't ready to walk away. The next step was obvious. Find the cabin. The letter mentioned a desk, a key, but no address. I went back to Claremont Street, hoping the house might hold more clues. This time, The door was locked, but when I circled around the back, I found a narrow gate and a small yard overgrown with ivy. A shed sat at the far corner. Inside, under a dusty tarp, was a locked metal box. I pried it open with a crowbar I found, leaning against the wall. Inside was a stack of old property records. Most were meaningless sales deeds, mortgage documents, but one caught my attention. A deed from 1982 for a lakeside cabin in the name of Harold Whitford. No street address, just Wrights Lake, Route 49. It was a 2-hour drive. By the time I reached Wrights Lake, the sun was sinking behind the pines. The cabin was exactly what you'd picture: weathered wood, a wraparound porch, and the kind of silence that feels almost heavy. Inside, the air was stale. I found the desk in the main room, a roll top covered in dust. In the bottom drawer was a small brass key. Taped to it was a note. Locker 317, Central Station. I pocketed the key and turned to leave, but froze when I saw fresh footprints in the dust. Someone had been here recently. The footprints in the dust led toward the back door of the cabin. They weren't mine. The prints were larger, heavier, like the person had been wearing boots. My pulse quickened. I stepped outside and scanned the yard. Nothing but the rustle of pine trees and the distant lap of water against the shore. Whoever had been here was gone, but maybe not far. I locked the cabin door behind me and got back in my car, gripping the brass key so tightly the ridges pressed into my palm. Locker 317, Central Station. The drive back into the city was a blur. By the time I reached the station, it was close to midnight. Central Station was nearly empty at this hour. Just a few travelers and the occasional homeless man sleeping on a bench. The lockers were on the east side, behind a row of vending machines. They were old, the kind that looked like they hadn't been updated in decades. I found 317 near the end of the row. The key turned smoothly. Inside, there was no duffel bag of cash, no stash of gold bars, just a plain cardboard box, about the size of a shoebox. My stomach tightened. I pulled it out, glancing over my shoulder. The box was surprisingly light. I opened the lid. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens of them, neatly labeled in handwriting that matched the letter from the first box. Dates stretching from 1992 to 1994, and one tape marked simply, "The night it happened." My first instinct was to get out of there before someone noticed me. I shoved the box into my backpack and headed for the parking lot. That's when I saw him, the man in the dark coat, the same one who had been watching me outside 112 Claremont Street. He was standing at the far end of the station, near the exits, his face half in shadow. I didn't wait. I ducked into a side corridor, weaving between maintenance carts and supply closets until I reached a service door that led out to the street. Back in my apartment, I locked the door and pulled out an old tape player I hadn't used in years. My hands shook as I slid in the tape labeled, "The Night It Happened." The recording started with muffled shuffling, like someone was fumbling with the device. Then a woman's voice trembling. "Urgent. My name is Margaret Whitford. If anyone finds this, please give it to the police. I'm at Wrights Lake Cabin, and I think he's going to kill me." My blood went cold. He said he loved me. Said he wanted to take care of me. But he doesn't let me leave. He says the city is full of liars, and I belong here with him. I tried to get away last month, but he caught me before I reached the road. There was a loud bang, like a door slamming. Then a man's voice, calm, deep, terrifying in its steadiness. "Margaret, what did I tell you about wandering off?" Her breathing quickened. "Please, just let me go. Your uncle will understand." The man interrupted. There was a sharp gasp, a scuffle, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. Then silence. The tape clicked off. I sat there in my dark apartment, the city lights flickering through the blinds, trying to process what I'd just heard. If this was real, if the man in the tape had killed Margaret, then Harold Whitford's fortune was tied to something far uglier than I'd imagined. I called Eleanor Price again, this time demanding the truth. Her tone didn't change. Cross. You are in possession of property that is legally yours if you complete the conditions. But you must understand, some of what you may discover is not meant for public knowledge. Not meant for public knowledge? Someone murdered her? There was a pause. Do you want the money or not? I hung up. My decision was already made. I wasn't going to bury this. The next day, I took the tapes to a friend of mine, Nate, who worked in audio forensics. He transferred them to digital files and cleaned up the sound. On several tapes, I could clearly hear the man's voice, sometimes coaxing, sometimes angry, always controlled. And I recognized it. Not from a friend, not from the news. I had heard it in person, in the station. The man in the coat. Nate insisted I go to the police immediately, but when we got to the precinct, things got strange fast. The detective who met us listened to half a tape before stopping it. His expression went cold. Where did you get these? I explained everything. The cabin, the box, the inheritance. He exchanged a glance with another officer. We'll need to keep these for evidence, he said. I should have felt relieved, but the look in his eyes wasn't reassuring, it was calculating. That night, my apartment door was unlocked when I came home. Nothing was taken except the original tapes. The next morning, a plain envelope was slid under my door. Inside was a single Polaroid. Me, leaving Central Station with the locker box in my hands. On the back, in neat handwriting, last warning. That was it. I was done playing along. I packed a bag, grabbed Nate, and drove straight back to the cabin at Wrights Lake. If the desk had the key, maybe it had more. We tore the place apart. In the attic, under loose floorboards, we found a suitcase. Inside were Margaret's clothes, her driver's license, and a diary. Her last entry, dated the night of her disappearance, read, "If I don't make it out, it's because I trusted the wrong person. He said he'd help me get away from Uncle Harry. I believed him. God help me. I think he's going to kill me tonight." That was the moment it hit me. The man on the tapes wasn't Harold Whitford. He was someone who hated him. Someone who had used Margaret as leverage. And maybe Harold had spent the rest of his life trying to find the truth. We left the cabin before dark. I didn't go back to my apartment. Instead, I sent digital copies of the tapes and diary scans to 3 different journalists, along with the whole story. The next week was chaos. The recordings went public. Police reopened the case. And the man in the dark coat? He vanished. I never saw him again. The inheritance was still technically mine, but I never claimed it. Instead, I asked that it be donated to a charity for missing persons. Sometimes, I walk past 112 Claremont Street. The house is still there, still empty. But in the upstairs window, I swear I've seen a shadow move. And sometimes, late at night, I think I hear that calm, deep voice whispering just behind me. You should have left it alone.